Hello, listener, and welcome to this preview of our latest Patreon-exclusive episode. To continue the conversation and listen to the full episode, head over to the Beyond the Screenplay Patreon. The link is in the show notes. Hello, patrons, and welcome to this Patreon-exclusive episode of Beyond the Screenplay, the podcast where each episode we do a conversational deep dive analysis into a film. Today we are talking about Network, the 1976 film written by Paddy Chayefsky and directed by Sidney Lumet. I'm joined by the Beyond the Screenplay team, Trisha Rand.
Hello, everyone.
Brian Bittner.
Hello.
And Alex Calleros.
Hi.
All right, so we are in week 4 of our Wicked Winter schedule. Last week we talked about Challengers. That was quite a conversation, and it's quite a movie, and that was a lot of fun. Next week we're talking about The Brutalist, which I know nothing about except its runtime and its name make me have to try really hard to not constantly make a pun about how brutal watching this movie is going to be. Mm-hmm. But also stuff happens and Adrian Brody's in it apparently and stuff. Anyway, so that's going to be a lot of fun to talk about. But right now we're talking about Network, which is pretty cool that we're getting to talk about Network. So this is a classic. I feel like it's not discussed a lot anymore. Like when we were growing up, it was a movie that I heard talked about and it was like one of those classics, but I don't see it around. So if for some reason you're listening to this and you haven't seen it and you're like, oh, I don't need to watch it, you should watch it. Network. Yep. It's really good.
So good.
It's really good and extremely relevant, which is frustrating. But so I feel like I watched this maybe late high school, early college, sometime in there, and probably largely, if not entirely, because I was really into Aaron Sorkin, and Aaron Sorkin has talked a lot about how Paddy Chayefsky was one of his big inspirations, and he's kind of just been chasing, him as a writer for a long time. I then watched Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, and this is the most I'll ever talk about that show because there's no reason to ever talk about it again.
But the pilot is Network.
The pilot is Network. Yeah. And like textually, it's referencing Network even. And the pilot episode is really good. Anyway, so there was a Network period where I watched this movie and knew about it and haven't seen it since. It's referenced, if you know the references, right? Like, I'm mad as hell, I'm not going to take it like that. You hear that if you're listening for it in things, but I haven't watched it start to finish in a really long time. And I really didn't remember anything past that epic midpoint scene. And so I forgot how wild the story gets and how they embrace it and just the kind of, I want to talk about theme and what all the irony that's in all of this and then the crazy place where it ends. And I want to hear from you guys, but just the last thing I'll say is I watched a lot of the behind the scenes that they have on this that were clearly DVD extras that they ported over to iTunes. Also made me feel really old that DVD extras are 20 years old now.
Oh, no.
That was really painful to see the copyright. But they kept talking about how funny this movie was and how it was such a dark comedy. And the whole time they were saying that, I was like, I don't feel like this is funny at all. This feels, it's funny, but it's not a satire. It is like a weirdly prophetic, disturbing look at where we are now from 50 years in the past. It's kind of how I was feeling. Like just the subject matter and how prescient it was mostly made me depressed. Whereas when it came out, I feel like it was kind of billed as a comedy also. So anyway, we can talk about all that kind of stuff. But anyway, want to hear from you guys. Network. Trisha, tell me about Network.
I love Network. Network is one of my favorite movies. I've seen it many, many times. I got obsessed with it probably in high school, maybe early college film school time. I think the script is brilliant. It's so, I can't wait to pull it apart with you guys and why it's so good. But I absolutely adore it. The characters are so iconic and distinctive. I think it's really funny, so I'm going to disagree with you there. I think it's this time around, the scene where they're in the revolutionary's house and they're sitting around having like a meeting about their contracts
with Lance Henriksen randomly.
Yeah. And then, it all like Laureen Hobbs is losing her mind about how much she has to like give up and the like subsidiary rights and the ancillary rights. And then like somebody fires a gun and they're like, okay, back to paragraph 2. It's really funny. It's everything about that just tickles me. So, and I think I agree with you that I know what you mean, where it's deeply uncomfortable also, right? Like it hits really close to home, even now. And I just, I don't know, there's something so, it's just one of the sharpest scripts ever written, best acted, best directed, incredibly tight, knows exactly what it's about. Focused and like grown up in its themes and its construction, and just like the perfect package of what a movie can be, in my opinion. So Network, I'm obsessed. I love this movie. I can't wait. I'm so happy we're talking about it.
Yeah. I want to talk about like characters as theme also. And like there's just so much in there. And yeah, to be clear, this movie is hilarious and I was laughing the whole time. It's more just like I was shook by his message.
Yes.
Right.
That was what I was trying to convey. Alex, what about you?
Yeah, I love this movie. And just watching it again, it's making me realize this really is in my top 10 probably of all time. It's just, there's something so exciting about seeing like an angry satire done this well. There's something so deeply cathartic. It's like this primal scream of a movie.
Yep.
And it's just, it's like, it's exhilarating to watch a movie do that. Like there's so few like satires or films in this genre that are this just kind of like incisive and full of like energy and rage and righteousness in a good way about like the state of the world and what the hell are we doing. And as we've been all alluding to, it's remarkable how prescient it feels and how it reminds me of a book I read probably around the same time I watched this movie, kind of in my college days, called Amusing Ourselves to Death, which is a really classic text on the idea of how, changing media, the way we consume information is changing how we relate to like reality. So reading a newspaper, you can just like focus on facts. But when we have 24-hour cable news, it's got to be entertaining and constantly getting your attention. It's visual media. It's got to be like fast. And so suddenly things that are supposed to be kind of like somber or sober, like communications about reality become entertainment. And, fast forward to TikTok, fast forward to just the data avalanche of nonsense pouring into our brains now. And Network is just kind of like, 50 years ago, essentially screaming to all of us like, dear God, what are we doing? And here we are. So anyway, so much to talk about, but I love this movie and I just respect it so much. Just like so much respect that this movie just goes all the way and is just so fearless in its statements. It's just fantastic.
Yes.
And Faye Dunaway. I mean, all the actors. Faye Dunaway. Oh my God.
Everybody. So good.
Criminally good.
Yeah.
Brian, what about you?
As I mentioned, I think a year or two ago on the podcast, I had not seen this until then. And it was just a movie I had heard so many things about, even from you guys, and had known some stuff through osmosis, but had not actually just sat and watched the movie. So I really didn't know that much about it. And so it was really cool watching it, just being like, oh man, we're going here. We're going to go here. And then I was like, oh wait, I'm like, the movie is doing the theme at me. It is turning me into the audience member who is leaning forward, being like, "Are you going to show me the thing?" And of course, that's so effective in that movie. And I love the texture of a Sidney Lumet 70s movie, and the pacing is really nice. I've mentioned before, some 70s movies feel they're too slowly paced for me, but I think the script is so sharp that it feels like it's got that nice cinema verite feeling that a lot of 70s movies have, but then the script and the editing obviously are keeping it just feeling like it's always kind of moving forward. So I'm both hanging out with the characters, but also feeling like I'm not waiting too long for the next thing to happen. And yeah, I really loved it. I haven't had enough time to sit with it as you guys have for it to be like an all-timer for me or anything, but I was just really blown away and was really excited to watch it again. And definitely watching it the second time, I still feel like there's stuff about this movie that I don't quite get in a good way, like in a way where I'm like, that third time I watch it, I'll understand a little bit more about this thing or that thing. And yeah, obviously just all of the theme, all of the stuff is not only prescient, but just very fascinating, very interesting. And I was weirdly thinking about two movies that feel like they live on opposite ends of this movie. The most obvious one, or a more obvious one, being Nightcrawler, which is like this movie, like what if we took it like all the way in that direction, to where it's almost like crazy. And then another one is from this past movie, September 5, which is about the TV station during the Munich terrorist attack, the 72 Olympics. And it's also 70s tech porn, that movie, for one, where it's just like every time they're like looking at stuff, the camera's like, look at this machine, look at it, they're going to use it now. But it's sort of like, it's almost like Network's like safe sibling, where it's like we are trying to do the best we can. It's like we know what the audience wants, and we know what sort of journalism is, and we know what so it's kind of all having this conversation on the safer side of the spectrum, rather than the like, let's give them what they want, even if it's this, that, and the other thing that Network does, which again, you then take that all the way through to Nightcrawler. So interesting obviously Network's an interesting movie to watch after having seen so many of the things that it influenced, like the Sorkin's work especially. But yeah, and also very excited to hear you guys talk about it, having spent more time with this movie and having more insightful things to say than I will.
Hope you enjoyed this preview clip. To continue the conversation and listen to the entire episode, head over to the Beyond the Screenplay Patreon. The link is in the show notes.